Oh, well, hello, Sister Philyaw. You are looking ravishing today.
Oh, Pastor Neely.
I am just tickled and filled with the Holy Ghost. I am just elated to have you here with me this evening. You whooped me. You whooped me.
I had to do it.
Oh my God, you have whooped me. Oh, man, how you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm good. Happy birthday.
Oh,
Happy
yeah.
birthday. Happy birthday. How old are you?
I will be 34.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God. You are an infant. You are a damn infant.
Yeah, that's what everybody says, man. You know? Yeah.
I
Yeah.
remember 34. I remember.
I remember 34. Okay.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
A long time ago. Yes.
I think that's something that excites me though. Like I've been like trying to do so many things and
Yeah.
I still got time, I guess.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Let me straighten. I feel like I'm a little crooked here. Okay.
Yeah.
Right,
Because we are broadcasting live.
Okay.
Everybody is at home and we're going to need the tides to be able to come in via Cash App or however you can get it to me.
I got a little dog here that is going to harass me. I don't want you on this event. And she's like, somebody said they're older than you. I'm older than all y'all. I'm older than everybody.
Look at my student. Yes, Lord, I see you. I see you, Brother Stone. Yes. Okay. Well, I want to go ahead and get everybody acquainted to the service this evening. We have one Deesha Philyaw here. Let me see. I got all your accolades up here. Let me see.
You were in like the literary crate stuff I wrote. 34.
Oh yeah, I got you. I'm ready. But she is the author. She is the author of The Secret Lives of Church Ladies. A book that is, I mean, super amazing. And very special to me and my brother Reggie Reeds, who's in the chat. This was the first book that we chose to kind of do what we do and go in depth with. And I'm glad that that's the one that we chose because
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, look, it's people coming in saying how much they loved it.
Oh, there's the yellow. Sorry, playing with lights here.
It's definitely like my favorite book of that year, man.
Thank you.
I can definitely say that. And it connected me with you, this amazing, genuine, giving human being.
Thank you. And we're friends. That's the thing. Like this book helped me make friends, like real friends. And I just appreciate you and Reggie so much. I'm steaming up my glasses.
I was just gonna say these
you got the blue tint.
You know what I'm saying? These pasta, these aviator pasta glasses.
What am I drinking? I'm not drinking any alcohol. I'm just generally, old and hot. I'm seltzer.
I started to get some wine.
And I really would have been sweating.
For communion.
Mm-hmm.
But I decided, that, maybe I should just let this turtleneck breathe.
Well, what do you call it? What is it? The cheating past the 3,000?
The cheating past the 3,000. It is. It is made of nothing but the finest linen. I mean, this is Egyptian thread count right here. You know what I'm saying?
Oh my goodness.
So for my folk that's in the chat, this is how we're gonna do it. I got some questions prepared. Y'all have been seeing me doing reconnaissance.
Yes.
And so you guys drop your questions in the question box and we'll work them in. We'll work them in. So let's see here. Oh, I got him over here.
Dog, you know what? Come here. Oh, Jesus. This is Fudgy.
Hello, Fudgy. How are you?
Harassing me. All right. Can you relax now? Can we,
So one of the things that I noticed while I was digging in the crates was this short story called I'm Not My Ancestors. right?
Yeah.
And I got like two questions with this.
Okay.
So the first question is, I have this thing that I say all the time when I'm on my IG stories that
Okay.
says, um, ancestors guide me always, always, right?
Yes. Okay.
And I think, yeah, there go my granddaddy right there. Every time I do one of
Hey,
these,
granddaddy.
yeah, I got one of my folks, my little shrine in the back, right?
Yeah, my altar is behind here, and granddaddy's back
Ah,
there. I had to pour him some Uncle Nearest this week. So,
yes, yes. And so my question is, what kind of made you want to write this story? I'm not
hmm
my ancestors, and what space do ancestors hold for
oh, I love this question. So,
you?
I Am Not My Ancestors was the first story I wrote after writing my collection.
Really?
And yeah, and I wrote it in the pandemic. Um, and I wrote it because um, Rion Scott held a satire writing workshop,
Oh
which
man.
was just phenomenal. And this was shortly after everything was locked down, and that's what we were doing. We were buying each other's books, teaching workshops, and going to workshops. So I went to this one, and I was ready to learn, and because I read satire, I'd never written it,
Yeah.
and so he just Rion, he's a great teacher, and he did such a fantastic job that I was like, I want to write some satire. I want to write some satire like now.
Yeah.
And so one of the things he said, and I forget who he was quoting, but he was talking about satire is it's not mocking, because if he said if you don't love what the object of your satire, that's just mocking. And I was like, okay, so what can I write about satirically that I want to poke at, but that I still love?
Yeah.
And I thought about the kids running around with those shirts. I am not my ancestors. Forgive them, ancestors, for they know not what the hell they're
Yeah,
talking about.
yeah.
Um, and so I was like, what if? And a lot of my stories start with, what if? So what if a girl who was wearing that one of those T-shirts, she was an activist. What if one of her ancestors rolled up
Yeah.
on her in
Yeah.
the middle of the night, and a ghost, a haint, as we say.
Yeah.
um and so that's the story. She comes home from a hard day of protesting, and goes to bed, and her granny is sitting on the dresser, and
Yeah.
like, what that mean? What that
Yeah.
mean? And
Yeah.
she's wearing
Yeah.
the shirt. Granny's wearing the shirt. What that mean? What this mean? And so I had a lot of fun with that one, because we don't we love those kids. We hate their ignorance. We hate their ahistorical perspective about our ancestors, but we love them.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was a perfect kind of channel for the satire. And then, hi, yes, I know. And then the other part of your question was about the role of ancestors, and also at the beginning of the pandemic, it just coincided with the time where I was starting to hear from my ancestors through friends of mine who do spiritual readings and things like that. And my grandmother, my paternal grandmother, sorry, my maternal grandmother, my paternal grandfather, my mother, and my father have all passed away.
Yeah.
And so, it was a time where I was quiet. That was one thing about this pandemic. It made a lot of us slow down and get quiet and still. And I was really in communication with them at that time. I'm thinking about how Robert, when writing about his book, he was talking about how the ancestors, spoke directly to him and through him with this book. And I can't say that was my experience, but certainly I was thinking about my ancestors more in that moment, and that informed my decision to write that particular story. But I do believe that my ancestors um, are protecting me, and I just don't sit still enough and listen enough. So
Yeah.
that's where I need to be in place to listen and to receive. But they are present. They are ever present.
Yeah. one thing you just said that I don't even have written down that I was just thinking about
Mm-hmm.
while you were talking about grandparents and ancestors being like ever present. You said
Mm-hmm.
haint.
Yes.
And I think over here we say it's like a witch standing on your back. You know, when you have the sleep paralysis,
Yeah.
and those little like, you know, like if you hit your eye too hard and you see those little shimmering
Yeah.
things moving across the side. And that's just something to me that's so beautiful, right? That we don't really give it enough space sometimes now in like just where
Yeah.
we are right now.
Yeah.
Um, that I always just try to oof, little I'm
Little
gonna
bass,
need
little
I'm gonna
extra
need
bass.
one of the I'm gonna need one of the mothers on the mother's board to
That communion
bring
grape
me a
juice,
bring me a lozenge.
not a hall.
Get a little.
Oh.
But yeah, that's something that I just wish that we kind of like leaned into a little bit more because like I was talking with my students and like all of these things like exist for them, but they don't really like know where they come from. So like if I step on one of their heels or something, they'll ask me to pat them on the back 3 times, you know? And one time I had them do like some short stories to kind of talk about where they thought they might come from, but we don't necessarily like, you know, we just don't lean into that enough to me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, and we position it in opposition to the Black evangelical church, not realizing the ties and the connections in terms of Black worship and Black church worship and traditions, and those things that we know are diasporic. I don't know why this dog
Look,
suddenly
all
wants
I
love.
look when you were just saying that, I was like, Lord, I hope somebody is getting a picture of Deesha rubbing this dog with this church hat on, and me sitting up here looking like we on a prayer line call.
I was gonna try and be cute, and then Pudgy was like, "We gonna be cute. We gonna be cute on the IG live."
Yeah. Now, another funny thing that I looked at when I was digging through the crates is something that you had already like told me about, but I don't know
Hmm.
why I didn't get around to checking it out.
Okay.
The 13 guys you meet on a dating app,
Yes.
right? Y'all, that is just so funny. And it's funny because it's unfortunate because I know these folks. You know what
It's
I'm saying?
real. I tell people that's not fiction.
Look, I know them folks, man. I've seen them. They've been in the car with me on the way to the club. I know them.
Yes.
And it's just so funny. And it's something that humor is like a theme that you play with so well. You kind of inject it in your pieces and you
You
know how to
do.
make it make sense. And so my question for you is how did you, I guess, learn to do that so well? And
Hmm.
I kind of have an idea, but it might just lead me to another question.
Okay.
But how did you learn to do that so well, and where did you get that idea?
So, it's kind of organic. I mean, when you're writing about Black people, and you really love Black people and you really listen to Black people, especially Black people, older Black people, we're naturally funny. We just
Yeah,
like, you can't you there's always going to be some element, and especially at those moments where people think it's not funny, right? So that's just that's my background. That's my culture. My mother, when she was dying, she was in hospice for 6 weeks. Hilarious,
yeah,
hilarious. My mother was dying, and on her deathbed, she was hilarious. And so I just think that that's just part of how I was raised, and the people around me, and it was their voices and their spirits that I tapped into when I was writing. And I'll just say this real quick, like when my mom was in hospice, people would come visit her because they heard she was dying. And this one guy came, he hadn't seen my mom since elementary school, and he was, oh, you were the most beautiful girl, and I had a crush on you, and I should have married you. And, he's talking, and I'm there watering plants, trying to, like, give them a moment. And then my
yeah.
mom dozed off and went to sleep. And so he
Th-
was like, oh, she fell asleep. I
Thank you,
better
First
go.
Lady. The First Lady brought me
Gotcha.
peppermint.
Did
Yeah,
peppermint, hard can't, there you
peppermint.
go. And and so I thanked him for coming and everything. He said, oh, she went to sleep. I better go. Thank you so much for coming. And as soon as that door clicked, my mom's eyes flew open. And I said, I thought you were asleep. She said, I was just ready for him to leave. Telling me all that. Find time to tell me all of that. She was like, but girl, look, I'm on my deathbed and I still got it going on.
I still got it.
So that was my mother dying. And like, you know, so that's just who I come from. But the other part of it, I think, is I always joke that I didn't get a sense of humor until I got divorced the first time. That's all I'm gonna say about that.
Yeah. I've got a question that's gonna like allow you to hover on some things you may have learned, I guess, in there. But I wanted to read one of these blurbs for y'all in case you hadn't yet. So let's see which one I got right here. All right, this is Sean. Okay, Sean is 48, y'all. And Sean said, let me be up front. First date is at my house. Some of y'all females just want a free meal. I'm not falling for that. And notice I didn't say all females. I said some females. That means not my mama, my sisters, my aunts, my cousins, or my daughter. Just the rest of you. Son.
Anybody that's been on a dating app have met Sean. Anybody. Anybody.
Listen, my man Sean done read the 48 Laws of Power. You know what I'm saying?
You know what? Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? He ready now. He ready now. You know what I'm saying? He's ready to crush his enemy totally.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? All right, let me see. Let me see what we got in here. See if we got something that coincides with where I'm headed.
Okay.
Ooh, I like this, and this will work for me. Okay,
right.
This is I am Victoria Tiffany. How do I write a story about my life without people knowing it's my life?
I mean, okay, first of all, why is this dog purring like a cat?
Go.
Wake up. See, I don't want to not answer the question that was asked. I mean, so it is possible to fictionalize your, take your life and just write it as, pass it off as fiction. But I just, I would question why. Why would you want to do that? Mainly because as interesting as our lives are, and I'll just be frank, and this includes me, so I'm not, saying, I'm not shading anybody, mine too. Our lives just aren't as interesting as we think they are. And I think if you're writing fiction to just keep it on the nose of what really happened, you're missing an opportunity. You're missing an opportunity of imagination and drama.
Give me a said fudge and go.
I just don't. She is like a baby right now. And she got gas.
We are in church for real. I used to fall asleep on my mama's lap like that, boy. Oh my God, that girl is.
She looking like, who did that? You did that. So I would say that you might start with a kernel of your life, but give it a chance. Leverage your imagination, leverage memories and nostalgia and your culture, and also raise the stakes. A lot of times, when we say, okay, here's what happened to me, the reason it doesn't make for good fiction is because you know how the story ends and you're missing opportunities. The whole point of fiction in many ways is to have your character really want something and then put obstacles in their way, interesting obstacles where it's not predictable. You don't know how they're going to get through it. So I would say it's not so much how can you do that, but why would you want to?
Yeah.
Why would you want to? And again, no shade to the person asking the question. Most of our lives, our regular, everyday lives, simply are not that interesting to other people. I promise you, it's not. But what you can do is take bits and pieces of your life, and then you can take advantage of the opportunity to do storytelling. So, dear sister, I have 4 half sisters, just like in that story.
Yeah.
But you know, and there, the way that it all came about and how we reached out to our 5th sister. It's funny, but it's not a story's worth of funny. It was a moment in time. And so if I had written that and just changed the names, it really would not have been an interesting story. What I did though was I took that kernel of what my sisters and I did, 4 of us. We picked up the phone and called the 5th sister all at the same time. Don't do that to somebody. Don't do that to somebody who, this woman had not wanted anything to do with our father or that side of the family. And somebody, old lady, says to us, she deserves to know. Y'all need to let her know that your daddy died. Maybe one of us could have called her.
Yeah.
We could all get on the phone and on speakerphone, and we're excited to talk to her. And that had to hurt, right? So anyway, I was like, well, what if instead of that, the person wrote a letter? And I love playing with form. So epistolary form was cool. She writes the letter. And it was also an opportunity to build some relationships between those sisters that I didn't have with my sisters, because we didn't all grow up together. I grew up with one of them. Our mothers raised us like sisters. But the others, we only connected in adulthood once our father died, but we knew of each other. And so I had an opportunity to have some fun with it. My sisters are fun, they're funny, but none of them are Tashita. I had so much fun writing Tashita. So if I only stuck to my sisters as they are, lovely women, all of them, but it wouldn't have been a story anybody cared about. So fiction is an opportunity.
I got something funny. Reggie. Now we have the ability to tell which of these sisters Deesha is, okay? So Deesha, in the story, Reggie, if you remember correctly, 2 of the sisters had mamas who was like, you gonna need each other because your daddy ain't shit, okay? So now we know which, we got 2.
No, I mixed it up. I mixed it up. I did. I scrambled that. So yes, there are 2 sisters who their mothers were like our mothers. But the character that's most like me, and she really isn't, is Kimba, which is not one of those sisters. And it's like Kimba lives in Philadelphia, you know, because that was me. They were all in Florida. I was in Pittsburgh. She was like the peacekeeper. I'm not the peacekeeper. I'm the oldest, but I'm not the, like we had a situation amongst the sisters recently, and I got pulled into it, and I just burst into tears and started crying. And they were like, okay, don't tell her anything else, because she is like, so they were like, even though you're the oldest, you're not the most mature of the sisters. So whereas Kimba is like the peacekeeper, she's the voice of reason, you know, she's putting everybody in it. That's not me. I'm like hysterical, and then somebody else has to like say, okay, let's just take a beat, you know, let's step back. So she's like me kind of like on paper in that way, but that was it. But you see, like I pulled that conversation that my mother had with my sister's mother, brought that into it, but then built more around it, you know?
Yeah, okay. So it's and right, Michaela? Fine, I'm gonna get y'all drunk. Yeah, right. Anyway, so Mateo said that this was a master class going on right now.
Hey, Mateo.
Yeah.
Hello to, good morning. Oh, what did they say? Good morning to Mateo, only to Mateo and his curls. Good evening, only to Mateo and his curls.
Only to Mateo and his curls. So I wanted, and that's something that I did want out of this. Like I was like, I want to like study craft, like get to know these authors better, and like also like have gems, right? Kind of go on. And so another thing that I found while I was doing my reconnaissance is on the National Book Foundation's Secrets of the South, right?
Yeah.
You spoke to the importance of like wise words from those already in the craft. And I can't recall the name of the person that you were talking about uh, off the top of my head, but you were kind of doing your thing, trying to learn about publishing, learn about getting
Yeah.
into business,
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and this person told you, don't worry about publishing, worry about becoming better at writing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yes.
so can you speak a little bit to like how how that switched your
Mm-hmm.
tunnel vision and how that has played into all of these pieces that you've been
Yeah.
like crafting and like the work that you do. I mean, the work that you do as a essayist, contributor, freelance work, and you're writing novels.
Um, so I will admit that when she first gave me that advice, I was like, oh, well, I'm trying to get published, woman. You know? But over time, I came to understand that she was right, you know, because that, the publication can give you validation. But none of this is a meritocracy. Lots of things get published. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a great story or whatever. It means that that particular editor liked that particular thing at that particular moment, or that editor had they're friends with somebody, or somebody's agent submitted. There was so many other factors. So the validation I was seeking, um, through publishing, I eventually realized, like, okay, I've been published. Now what? Like, and that's the other thing people have to understand, especially even a book that gets, nominated for a National Book Award, you still should want to grow, right?
Hmm.
And you still will experience rejection. It doesn't mean that, from here on out is easy street. So it helped me to realize I'm not in this just to be able to call myself a writer. I actually like telling stories. I enjoy telling stories. I enjoy writing things that people can engage with. And I had to grow up in that sense. I had to move from I'm publishing, I want to get published so I can say this is what I do, right? Because I had this dog. I have a degree that I don't use. I have two degrees that I don't use, and so that was part of it too. Like, I have to have something to show for all this education. That was what I was thinking at the time. I
Yeah.
had also been a stay-at-home mom, and so it was like I gotta, to call myself a writer, I have to have these credentials. I have to have these publications. But what was getting lost in all of that is I actually care about this. I actually like writing. I actually enjoy it. I entertain myself. I love experimenting. Like that, when that started to happen, then I was like, this is what she's talking about. But the other thing she said as part of that advice was, one reason you want to get better is that when you start working with editors, you're going to want to know when to take their edits and critique and revise and do whatever, and when to say you don't know what you're talking about. But you
Yeah.
can't say that until you know yourself as a writer. You know your strengths. You know enough about writing to know when to stand up for yourself. And so that did happen to me. I did have to kill a piece because I was writing about racism and foster care and adoption for this publication. And it wasn't new. I wasn't uncovering anything, but I was writing it through the lens of as an adopted parent. My youngest child is adopted. And but for those white women editors, what I was saying about race and foster care, and why Black children are overrepresented in the foster care system and all of these things, that was new to them. I talked to the foremost authority on race and adoption, Dr. Dorothy Roberts. I did all of my research, and they were like, "Well, can we get a Black scholar with, like, name recognition? Like, what does Cornell West have to say about this?" I was like, not a
Mm.
goddamn thing, because Cornell West doesn't talk. I'm sorry, doesn't talk about adoption. And so when I wrote the editor back, I was like, did you just pull a Black scholar out of your ass? Because, like, this woman is an authority. She's an expert. So I pushed back. But if I had just been focused on, oh, I want to get this published, I would have let them intimidate me.
Yeah.
But I didn't. And so I was like, no, I'm not going to go ask Cornel West shit, because he doesn't, this is not his wheelhouse. I have the expert, and you can take it or leave it. And usually when you kill a story, there's a kill fee. They pay you like 25% of what, I read them for Phil so much, they paid me 100% and just never published it.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I'm not changing it. I'm not changing it. And they paid me. So that takes time. That takes time to develop that confidence in your own abilities, in your worth. That's the other thing too. Like, I wasn't going to edit that and make it something that they were happy with, but it had my name on it. I got to live with that. So yeah, I feel like I don't even know if I answered your question.
Oh
but...
no, you answered it. Like, you answered it, and I was thinking while I was watching the video, from listening to like Mateo and listening to you and listening to Robert, right, talk about this process that goes before publishing, and then after publishing, and then before release, right? Like, and you guys have said things that I was like, oh, I didn't even know that was a thing, what is that, right? Like, I was listening to the video, and you were talking about the fact that the editor had to go check the price of blue crabs. And,
yeah.
And I was like, blue crabs in 1985 or something like that?
Yeah.
And,
yeah, fact checking, man.
Man, I was like, yo, that's a thing. Like, I just thought that y'all could, like, prosper and do it, just,
No, well, put it like this. I can say that not everybody gets fact checked that way.
Yeah.
But that's even fiction. That's the thing. Like, even fiction, because you're still trying to tell a truth. I mean, unless it's, magical realism or speculative fiction, it still should be. Your eyes are open. How are you snoring? So that was fun. And they also came up with like a style sheet just for, she is wide awake.
Yeah.
A style sheet just for my book. And it was cool because it was just full of Black culture references that were not like common usage. And so they list them on the sheet. And so I looked at that sheet, and it was like, it tells a story about my upbringing, about being Black in the South during certain eras. There was a lot of stuff from the 80s in there. But yeah, the price of blue crabs, she tried to find it and she couldn't. So
let me get one of these pulled up.
Let's see. I know you're happy. It's like purring, but it's loud.
Ooh, I like this. Lord. Okay, I think it's good. So this is from Crazel88. You can correct me if I pronounced it wrong. We all about pronunciations. It says, I read that you originally had a different version of Peach Cobbler. What was your revision process? Let me see. What was your revision process for a collection of stories? And I have a question kind of similar.
Okay.
When we were on Reggie's live, Mateo was doing like these deleted scenes. So to add to that, what is the mental process like when you make decisions on what goes in and what goes out too?
Okay. So I'll start with Peach Cobbler first. So initially, Peach Cobbler, I took it to the point where Trevor Neely graduates. It's their last tutoring session.
My son?
And
okay.
Yes.
He's doing good, eh?
Okay, Fudgy has chronic bronchitis, plus she's a pug, so she sounds like this. And so I had him go right up to the last day of tutoring, and then the next scene, you flash forward, and they are in their 30s, and Olivia has a bakery, and she's closing up one day, and Trevor walks in. They haven't seen each other since they were kids, and he tells her that he found out about their parents having the affair. And she just felt this relief because she carried this secret and this somebody else's burden for so long, and then to find out that he had been carrying it too. So then she takes him to the back of into the kitchen, and they make a peach cobbler and they have sex.
Okay.
And I just thought, you cannot tell me anything. This was like the best, right? Best sexy, best ending. And then I had all of the people that read that version, they were like, yeah, this isn't working. This isn't working. And I was just like, if one person had said it, I might have ignored them and just was like, well, it works for me. But
Yeah.
like to have like 5 people tell you something's not working, it's not working.
Yeah.
And what they all said in different ways was, it just doesn't ring true. And that got my attention, like, because I did want it to ring true. So I was like, all right, how can I have an ending that rings true? Let me go back into the story. And I went back and I went deeper into relationships. Olivia's relationship with her mother, and I added other scenes and other dialogue that weren't there before. And I deepened her relationship with Trevor. In the first version, they only had the tutoring. And, in the final version, they actually, got together. And that wasn't there. So once I went deeper in those relationships, and then, spoiler, he breaks her heart, or she gets her heart broken. I'll put it like that. And then there was and the reckoning that needed to happen. The reckoning was not between her and Trevor. The reckoning was between her and her mother. And so that's why I was like, we're going to end this with her and her mother having that moment while she's still a teenager. We're not going to, fast forward into the future. So so that's how that revision came about. I have to say, I think because I don't know why, my editing process with the editor at the publisher was pretty straightforward. The book that I turned in is not the book that you see. It's better, but there was just not big changes.
Yeah.
I was so worried about that, but there were not big changes. But Sarah, my editor, she tightened things up. She asked questions. She never said, like, I think this needs to change. She would just ask me questions. And sometimes in the asking, I'm like, oh, I get it. That's not clear. I can be clearer here. I can elaborate more here. She would point out those sorts of things. And so the collection is richer for it. But I did a lot of revising of these stories before I got a book deal. And I think that was part of it, is that, I will work on a story for 2 years. I used to think like I couldn't write fast, right? But I can. So some of those stories I wrote in a month, and some of the, or however long, and then other stories that, I wrote them over a span of time. So I can write fast. I just don't always. You're back. Okay. All right. I didn't know what was
All
going
right.
on. All right.
Oh man, I didn't put my thingamajig on do not disturb, but
Oh,
I'm back
okay. All right.
good.
All
Someone
right.
tried to
Welcome
call.
back.
Let me see, where was I about to go? Because you had talked about something that let's see. Oh, I know where I was going. I believe when we last spoke, Sister Philyaw, we were celebrating your HBO deal for this moving to the screen. However,
Yes.
that's not where I'm going here. Let me see here. I go back into my sermon notebook here.
All right.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So in that like impromptu live, someone asked in the question box, what is a question that you wish people would ask you? And you said something to the effect of, you wish like people would ask you an exploratory question about your relationship with your mom through, I believe, like Peach Cobbler and all of those, because a lot of those
Yeah.
explore relationships with mothers. So
Yes.
I decided to make your dream come true. So my question is, if this book is like I guess a conversation made tangible, and you were handing it to your mother, what is the conversation that is being had in that piece?
In Peach Cobbler, or the book as a whole?
In the book as a whole.
Okay, so sometimes we miss the things that are right in front of us, right? And that's certainly the case for me. That's certainly the case for me.
But like I told you not to say nothing. Now we talked about
exactly. You know, it was once I started doing interviews about my book, and people would always ask me, did you go to church? Were you in church growing up? And I was starting to say, you know, what's interesting is that I was sent to church. My mother and my grandmother didn't go, but they sent me. And I remember asking my grandmother once about it when I was little, and she was like, oh, I'll go to church when I get right, you know, when I get myself together. And I was like, even as a kid, I thought, well, isn't church a place you're supposed to be able to go to get yourself together? And then I really never thought about it much at all after that, until people are asking and asking. Here's what was right in front of me. Both my mother and my grandmother were women who had children, but who never married. And I believe that they felt the stigma of that, perhaps the shame, but for whatever reason felt that it would make them unwelcome at church. But they wanted me to go. So they were still kind of on that like respectability thing, like, you know, it's like it's too late for us, but we're going to send you. That's the only thing that makes sense to me, you know, knowing that, and then knowing, you know, other aspects of my mother's life. And my mother died when she was 52. So she was young.
Yeah.
I think if I were to hand this book to my mother, who is someone who I felt like in her lifetime did not get free.
Yeah.
Free of whatever shame she had about, you know, getting pregnant with me when she was 17, having me when she was 18, shame around never being married, all of those things. I would hope that in these stories she would see that she wasn't alone, and see that there were forces at work that contributed to how she felt about herself and her life, and that she could shake that off. And I don't mean shake it off like it's easy, but that she could define herself for herself.
Yeah.
Maybe, hopefully, in these stories, she would find some healing. That's what I would want for her. I would also hope that when she looked at the mother-daughter pieces that are all through this book, clearly I had some things that I needed to still, some unfinished business between me and her. But, you know, she died in 2005. So while we made peace before she died, what I learned from writing this book is that there was still a lot there. So there are pieces of my mom in there. There's pieces of me. There's pieces of our relationship, all throughout. And I think that some of those stories would start a conversation between my mother and me. There are things that where she would recognize herself, but only she would recognize herself because only she knows these things.
Yeah.
And I think that she would come to me and we would talk about certain things that we never, ever talked about when she was alive. So I think it would do for us what I'm hearing from readers is doing for them, starting a lot of conversations, mothers and daughters, church members talking about these things, and then women engaging and sort of interrogating themselves around what the church, how the church has influenced them for better or for worse.
Yeah, man, that's powerful. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
And I'll ask one more, and then I'll take one from there.
Okay.
So this question, let me see, because I wrote in cursive and I shouldn't have.
My handwriting is awful now because of computers.
I'm
Awful.
telling you. Okay, so you write about men without having to center us
Hmm.
through relationships while managing to give a level of complexity to the women who are at the core of everything, right?
Hmm.
And so and even in doing that, you still are creating this space for both men and women to like dwell and deal with their complexities. And so my
Yes.
question is, like I make fun of who Pastor Neely is, right? But
Hmm.
the other thing is that we know that these men exist, right?
Yes.
And it's like unfortunate, it's like, yeah, he ain't shit type stuff, right? And so my
Right.
question is, why do you think these women continue to make this space for
Hmm.
these black men who, by all accounts, probably don't deserve that space?
Hmm. I think it is an off a product of what I took a course at the Incarnation Institute for Sex and Faith, and they
Mm.
call it the unholy trinity:
Mm.
shame, guilt, and fear.
Man,
And
where's
so
my pen? I need to. Dang.
and so I mean, and this didn't start with the black church. So let me just say that
Yeah,
this
yeah,
did
yeah,
not start with the black church. This
yeah.
is
We are
Christianity.
not shit like all over the spectrum.
It's
Yeah, I get where you're going.
patriarchy, it's Christianity, which, I mean, it's really perfect if you think about it, right? Which is, you teach people that they can only get their information about how to live and how to be and how not to go to hell from this book.
Yeah,
And then the book reinforces men's positions. And then there's scriptures that teach that it's of the devil to question and to, you got to have the faith and you got to believe and as a child and all of these things. And so the fear of being out of God's will or going to hell or whatever people call it, it keeps people from asking questions, from challenging. And then things that are considered human nature, we're told are shameful or that they have to be done within, say, the confines of heterosexual marriage. So people just being people, having sexual urges, suddenly, I'm struggling. It's not a
yeah,
struggle. You're going through puberty. It's not a struggle. You're horny. I mean, you're human. And so we've taken basic humanity and stigmatized it, and then people hide and they don't ask questions, and then they want to be found holy, and because again, don't want to go to hell, um, and so nobody questions it, and so you're subjugated, but you don't question your subjugation because you're taught from the very beginning not to question. And you're taught that the people who are anointed or God's chosen, you especially don't question them. I mean, it's the perfect scam. I mean, it is the perfect con.
it creates the space that Pastor Neely needs.
It's a situation ripe for abuse and exploitation. And so it's not that black women aren't smart or aren't, we don't see it, and we've found ways where we are the majority of the church, but in being obedient and in embracing the things that we've been taught and wanting to be good. Who doesn't want to be good? But the thing is like, who taught you that definition of good? And when you look at who taught you, and those are not people who are acting in service of your best interest and your wholeness, then you got to reject that definition of good. That's asking a lot of people to
Hmm.
overcome something that they've been taught from day one, when their very um, soul is at stake, right? And so, if you believe in an afterlife and heaven and hell, and especially what a lot of Black folks were taught from time of slavery, which is you're going to have hell on earth, but that's okay because better is coming for you. So you're going to endure things here. It's okay. You're getting your crown in heaven. That's the other piece of it. So people are willing to endure and wait because there's the promise on the other side. Again, what a con, and I try not to,
No, I mean, I think I always try to because I do these when I first started reading a lot in what I called I talked about it when I was writing about the spook who sat by the door, but reading in this certain canon, right, where you learn all of these things that were stripped away, right? I would test it out on my mom, right?
Yeah.
And so I'd be like, "Hey, Mom, I got a question for you." And she'd be like, "What is it now, Jared?" And I'd be like, "All right, roll with me. If there was no promise of heaven or hell, would you still pray?" And she's like, "Write Psalm 91 3 times because I'm sick of you, boy."
Well, you know what? There's in How to Make Love to a Physicist, Lyra realizes something about her mother. She said, if heaven was open to everyone, my mother would abandon Christianity immediately. Immediately. So there's definitely this, elitism isn't the right word, but this idea of not it's this elite group, this select few.
144,000. What is?
If you're a Jehovah's Witness, right? And I'm like, I don't know. That's that one I will never understand. But
it's been booked. It's been full.
Right. But but I do want to acknowledge and shout out our liberation theologists, our feminist theologians. So I don't ever intend to paint Christianity with this broad brush, because that's not accurate. That's not true. So I want to be sure to acknowledge that one of my best events was with a group of Black women pastors. They had a book club, and when they hit me up on Facebook Messenger, like, we want to meet with you, I was like, am I in trouble? It's gonna be. And but they were all feminists, all progressive, all revolutionary. I loved it. So there are Christians who are having those hard conversations, who are challenging the patriarchy and the white supremacy within the church and the harm that it's done.
Yeah.
And disrupting those narratives that don't serve us as a people, and women in particular. So people are, I want to acknowledge that.
Absolutely. And I see some people, well, I'll say this and then I'll acknowledge this, but even in that same canon that I was talking about, there is also all of these books about how Christianity existed in some form in Africa prior to slavery, right? And so there is always this space for analysis, right?
Yeah.
That isn't necessarily aimed at destruction. And some people are talking about come on, Black liberation theology and womanist theology. And when I was reading Ibram X. Kendi's How to Be an Anti-Racist, he's talking about this Black liberation theology. And while I was taking the expansive journey that is A Promised Land by Brother Barack Obama, and he mentions Buddy, that guy, I went and did some more reconnaissance because that's how I always find my books. And the guy that he had that issue with, that pastor, was a student of this Black liberation
Reverend Wright
theologian, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who has some books that I want. I need to put them on my wish list. My wish list is so long at this point. But
are you talking about Dr. Cone?
I think so. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, James Cone. Okay.
Yep. And so that's a rabbit hole that I can't wait to go down.
Absolutely. And that's and there's the scholarship is there, but people are not encouraged to to do that. So so we were saying that James Cone, Jeremiah Wright was a student of Dr. Cone's. Okay, yeah.
So let's get one more out of here, and then I got a question from Kiese. Oh, gosh.
Kiese's in there?
No.
Oh, no, he had the question from last night. That's right. He did. I'm ready for that one. I'm ready.
Okay. Man, there's so many good questions. Oh, that's interesting.
Howard Thurman. That's right. Yes.
Let's go
Yes.
here. How, if any, because I think this is interesting and kind of in step with like that Secrets of the South thing. How, if
Hmm.
any, did living in Pittsburgh influence your writing?
The first thing that popped in my head was the first line of Snowfall. Black women weren't meant to shovel snow.
Mm.
I have lived in this city since 1997. I cannot wait to get out next year when my youngest child graduates because I hate everything about winter, everything about it. Um, so that's the first part of my answer. um, but more broadly than that, 2 years ago, I think it was now, um, two different studies found that Pittsburgh was the worst city in America for Black people, of all large cities, and Black women in particular. And I think we might have tied with Cleveland on for Black women. Um, and to which all Black women in Pittsburgh said, "Yeah, we know. Y'all
Yeah,
just finding out what we already knew." Um, this is not a city that loves Black women. It's
yeah.
absolutely not. And so I would say that because of that, when I started writing fiction 20 years ago, all the way up through this collection, I wasn't really mining my my current home, which has never felt like home. I was mining my memories and my nostalgia for for how I grew up. And so I guess we have to Pittsburgh to thank for that. That
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was, and I hesitate to say I was homesick because I don't want to move back to Jacksonville. Um, I might move back to the South, but not Jacksonville. And poor dog. Um, so yeah, so the fact that this place has never been home kept me kept the memories fresh of the place that will always be home.
Yeah.
People, yes, the dog
Yes.
has chronic bronchitis. I'm
Faith
sorry.
and love. Fudgy
She's
is
fine.
okay.
She's fine.
Okay, so I'll do Kiyosa's question, and then I'll try to get like maybe one or two of the folk in the chat. All right,
Okay.
and well, let's get your question to Robert. What do you?
Ooh.
Yeah, hold on. Let me get
Okay.
my
You
pen
ready?
ready. Hold on, I'm ready.
Okay. Um, for Robert. Mm. Give me 1 second.
Oh, take time. I can't. This is my
First, I mean,
second favorite part.
there's so much there because, it's like, do I want to have him answer a question about the prophets or about himself? Um, I want to ask Robert about community, because we know that, he's been son of Baldwin, and son of Baldwin is Robert, but it is also the community that Robert has built. And a community that has been a blessing for so many of us. Um, my question for Robert is, what role did our community, our digital family, play in the creation of the prophets? How did the community inform the story? How did the community, or did the community, um, help him as he was writing? Like, because I don't work in isolation. I mean, the pandemic has emphasized that I'm leaning into community more, in general, but also writing, community of writers, community of bookstagrammers, black books, black bookstagrammers. Um, so, how has community, impacted his writing life?
If you could say one word about the prophets that you
Ooh.
wanted him to talk about, and then I'll wrap it up in a beautiful
Okay.
like question for you. What would that word be?
Tenderness.
Ooh,
Tenderness.
try a little
Yes.
tenderness.
Tenderness. Yes.
Oh man, that's gonna be heavy. I can already feel that. Okay, okay. So Kiyose's question was, which point of view is hardest for you, and what do you feel like you can do with the third that you can't do with the first?
Okay. So I heard this question last night. I've been thinking about it ever since. And I decided that I'm going to do what my friend Damon Young said. So before my book came out, and Damon and I have been friends for, at this point, over 15 years. And if y'all don't know, Damon, co-founded VSB, Very Smart Brothers. He's the author of What
I
Doesn't Kill You
wouldn't
Makes You
move
Blacker.
that. It's up
He's my
there. It's behind there.
he's my Pittsburgh homeboy. And, we were talking about getting ready to do a book tour and all that stuff. And he said, remember, you control the narrative, you control the interview. He was like, if somebody asks a question and you don't like the question, don't answer it. He's like, you can say whatever you want. And so it's not that I don't like KSA's question, though. It's just that for me, I don't think about point of view in the ways that he kind of framed it. But it got me thinking, the question got me thinking about point of view, right? So first I want to say, because he said first and third, I love second person. So How to Make Love to a Physicist is second person. And it's one of my favorite stories in the collection. So I want to say that first. So I would say it's, because I love it, it's also one of the easiest for me to write. It's easier than first or third. Then I started thinking about the stories I wrote in first person and the stories I wrote in third person. One of the things that's important for me with first person, I think, is for girls and women who are most at the margins. I think that I pull them, I like first person for them because they are literally telling their own story with first person. Now that may not hold true, because like, why couldn't Lyra tell her own story, first, I don't know. But when I think about Jael, when I think about Olivia, and I think about Olivia, who shows up again in Instructions for Married Christian Husbands, where they're all typically in marginal positions, but I wanted to center them, and first person was a way to do that. And then the story that jumped out at me that was not Daniel, I'm sorry, was When Eddie Levert Comes.
Mm-hmm.
That's a third person story, I think. I can't even, don't quote me, hold on a second. Where's my third? Yes,
Afro
third
book
person.
requel. I was just thinking that. I was like, great, she's kind of answering your question.
Yeah. So third person, When Eddie Levert Comes, and even the character daughter, she doesn't even have a name. She is daughter, and so I think having that be third person shows that that it's not the same dynamic where she's telling her story, because still she's very much not in control, because then there's this relationship with her mother that she's got to try and navigate, a mother who wasn't the mother she needed her to be, but now she's got to take care of her. And I wish I could sit here and say, you know what, I'm so brilliant, I thought all of that through, and so therefore I chose third person. I mean, I think the point of view that needs to be is the point of view that will show up. And I have experienced changing point of view, but never in these stories. I have a novel I've been working on for a while, and I've flipped back and forth between first and third person in that novel. And that I did because sometimes, depending on the character, first person feels navel gazing, and it feels like they're whining. And if they're whining, I don't like them. And if I don't like them, the reader's not going to like the character. So I might switch to third because first feels too close. But there's no science on this for me. I'll experiment.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, let's see what we got here. I'm gonna do this one because it's gonna answer like two. Oh
Okay.
gosh, Reggie has a good one too. I'll
Reggie from
do
the fifth
I'll
flow.
do I'll do Mateo's first because it kind of answers, I believe,
Hey.
kind of answers Michaela's question too. But what do
Okay.
you like slash dislike most about publishing a book and or the publishing industry?
Okay. I'll do this part first. The dislike about publishing, um, um, the fickleness of it. Because people, and Mateo knows this, like once you have a book published, people ask your advice about, how to get published and how to write a story that's going to sell and all of those things. And unfortunately, part of the answer, any honest answer, has to be luck. That
Yeah,
doesn't mean that it's not good writing or a good story or the writer's not talented and all of those things. There is still an element of luck and there's still an element of community and networking. My book is my book, but I don't know. Fewer people would have heard about my book if Kiese hadn't blurbed it. Fewer people would have heard about my book if Kiese hadn't mentioned it on Tracy's the Stacks podcast. All of those things matter. So I wish, my wish is that the publishing industry was a meritocracy, but I don't want writers to beat themselves up because they're not getting published. Understand that the system is not designed to reward good work,
that. Mm-hmm.
but still you want to write a good book because that's your name on that. and you want to write something that can be what my book has been for me and what I know Mateo's book has been for them. It's connecting you to people in ways that you would not be connected otherwise, and you have wonderful conversations and you make good friends and you put good art into the world that people will engage with, and maybe not just learn something from the story, but learn something about themselves, and just and our worlds are better for our stories. I'm talking about Black people right now. So I wish there was more opportunity so that good stories by Black people were, it was like, you wrote a good story, here you go. Here's your book deal. And oh, here's a nice check. We didn't start talking about the money yet. And here's a nice check
Yeah.
so that you can live and write your next book. And then the next one and the next one. So I dislike that that's not the publishing industry that we currently have. What I like about writing and publishing is that the connections, the connections. Plus, just in general, if I couldn't tell stories, I don't know. There's nothing else I want to do. There's literally nothing else. There's not like a second career or anything like that. There's nothing I enjoy more, in terms of of course, being with my family and friends, but the work, this is what I want to be doing. I have fun writing. If it's not fun, I don't want to do it. I enjoy writing. I entertain myself. I amuse myself. I challenge myself. I learn when I'm writing, and I love to learn. I've always been, bookish, and I always loved homework. I was just a weird kid.
Oh, I've seen that picture. Yeah.
When I was a 35-year-old high school senior. Listen, so that's what I love. I love the opportunity to tell stories, and I love that this book in particular has, people have engaged with it the way they have, that it did what I wanted it to do. Black women felt seen and heard. I'm always going to center Black women in anything that I do. So I love that publishing is a way to do that, to bring us from the margins and put us where we belong, which is at the center of our own lives and the center of stories about our lives. And then I think the other part was, I think I kind of answered a little bit of all of it: publishing, and then the writing, and then the publishing industry. I am really hopeful. Like, folks like Mateo just like make me hopeful about publishing getting closer to being that meritocracy. I will always shout out KSA and everybody else who acts like a gateway and not a gatekeeper. Y'all are going to get tired of me saying this, but that is going to be, I say it every chance I get. This industry, it has too many gatekeepers, and that's other writers too. That's other Black writers too. I'm not naming any names, but they exist. And so I'm excited because I have a crew that's gateways. Robert, Mateo, all of these folks who it's all love. It's all love and it's all genuine. Yeah. So I love that. And I think that we are going to make change. And we're going to do that because we are Toni Morrison's children. And what did she say? She said the whole point of getting this power is to empower somebody else.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing. And so whatever we've got, we're sharing. We're lifting as we climb. That's our legacy, the legacy of the Black Women's Church Club movement. That's how we move in the world. And so it's going to have a ripple effect because we're blurbing books for people who are going to blurb books for people. And those blurbs matter. Yeah. You cannot tell me that KSA's blurb did not matter for the success of my book. Taking nothing away from me, it absolutely did. And now I get to do that for somebody else. I apologize. I can't do that for everybody, or I would never write my own books. But, the fact that I get to wield that power in a way that helps somebody else is important to me. And I know Mateo's going to do it. I know Gabriel Bump's going to do it. And Donnie Walton and Dantiel Moniz and all of these folks are going to do it. So I could talk about that part all night. That's what I love.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Because it's so true. I know that firsthand. So this community thing that you were just speaking of will go right into my co-host's question here. Brother Reginald
yes.
says, what inspires you to be the community builder that you are?
I think it's two things. I am my mother's daughter, and my mother was like the person who you invite her to a party, she's going to show up an hour early, even if she didn't know you all that well, and she's going to help.
Yeah.
She's going to help. She's got it because she has to be helpful.
Yeah.
And so I inherited that from her. I'm also, even though I have 4 sisters, I'm my mother's only child. So I grew up as an only child. And so I always was looking for community and we could go outside and play, but when it was time to come in, I was by myself. And so I've always sought out community. And so it was just second nature that wherever I am, I'm trying to connect. And it also happened kind of organically. Like I'm always going to be your hype woman. So I got an agent. I have a literary agent, and like 4 or 5 of my friends have signed with her, all Black.
Yeah.
Because I said to her, hey, if I know somebody who, is looking for an agent, can I just pass them along to you through me so they don't have to go to your website? She was like, of course. So I got an agent. I can't guarantee she's going to sign you, but I can be that conduit. I can be that gateway. I got a great entertainment attorney who's like just a strategist, and he's amazing. And so when people are like, yeah, I'm about to get a book deal, do you have a lawyer? You need a lawyer. Let me introduce you to Sekou. Let me introduce you to Sekou Campbell. So my friends are signing with Sekou. I have a speaker agent. And it's like, okay, you don't have to manage all this by yourself, and you can have somebody pitching you to get other jobs so that you can leverage this book. Because y'all, we make money, not just from the book sales and all of that, which is great, but we got the speaking gigs and all of that stuff that's important. So let me introduce you to my speaker agent. And so so I felt like I found that was just happening kind of naturally, and it feels good to do it. When somebody, a friend messaged me and was like, oh my God, I love Sekou. Now I signed with Sekou. And then somebody else said the same thing to me. I just signed with Sekou. And I just, I think nothing of it. I'll put the text group chat and I'm out. Send the email and I'm out. It
Yeah.
feels good. It feels natural.
Awesome. Awesome. Let me see here. Okay. I'll let this be our last question, and then we'll go
Okay.
ahead and let Fudgy go on, chill out, let you get out the gear. So this is from my homie Jess. She
Hmm.
says, as a Latinx woman who is a lesbian, the way you
Hmm.
treated queer women was with such care and compassion. What inspired you to write those stories? I believe is the
Hmm.
last part of there, kind of cutting it off, Jess. But
Okay.
I bet that's where she's going. What inspired you
Okay.
to write those stories?
So, I had somebody ask me if, oh, did you put the queer stories in there for like representation? And I'm like, no, like I'm not like, no, I don't make people into tokens. Like that's what representation sounds like to me when somebody asks me that question. So then, why are those stories there? And I was like, because it's a book about Black women's sex in the Black church. And a book about those things would not be complete if there weren't stories about queer women, because we know that there are queer women in the church. We know that they're grappling with these things specifically because of the church's teachings that are so rooted in, again, good, evil, heaven, hell,
Mm-hmm.
um, and binaries, that you have to be this or that. And we just know that human beings are not wired that way. And so to me, it was very organic that, of course, there are going to be women who are grappling with these things. Um, the other part of it is that this is a book about stories that women only tell each other, or that we keep close to our vest. And if you think about it, and Eula and Caroletta in Eula, they talk about these things. If you have been taught and you have bought into the idea that you should not be having sex until you're married, and you can't be alone with men, and all of these rules to keep you pure, who are you spending most of your time with? Other women. And so, and we know that, we can talk about fluidity, right? Because again, I'm not going to do the binaries of like, you're either straight or you're hetero or not. There's fluidity there too. And so those are church women's experiences, but we don't always have space to talk about that, because for fear, because we're going to be condemned if we tell those stories. And so when I said I wanted Black women to see themselves and hear themselves in these stories, that's Black queer women too.
Awesome, awesome. I was jacking what you were saying about fluidity. I was going to use
Hmm.
it to build a question for Robert. It was
Yes,
I gotta catch it as it comes in my.
because you're so old now at your big age of
Yeah, I'm getting
34.
so old. When I used to be a rapper, I would freestyle, like, people would like beat on the tables and stuff, and I could like go, right? And it was like, how do you do it? And it's the same way like with what I'm doing now. I see the words and I'm like, I have to pull them out as it's going. So I was like, let me grab fluidity because I really want to talk about that in these
Yes.
relationships. So yeah.
And in the prophets, absolutely, absolutely, because we don't have a language for these experiences, because we insist on binaries,
Yeah. Hmm.
right? And so if you had said to Eula or Caroletta, even if Caroletta was being honest, she would not call herself gay.
Yeah.
Even though she's more honest than Eula is, she probably still wouldn't call herself gay. But we force people to choose, and I don't know of any binary that serves us well.
Yeah, and that was like highlighted in like Eula's for me, like while I was rereading
Hmm.
it, which kind of speaks to what Kia say was saying about how you have to read things so many times. This
Yes.
must have been like my fourth time reading it, and in
Thank you.
Eula's
Thank
in
you.
oh yeah, I'm probably gonna read that 30 times before I check out of here. But in Eula, she has this issue with
Hmm.
the idea that she's not a virgin when Caroletta
Yeah.
is like, I'm
Hold
wondering
up.
how is she doing this mind magic to
Yeah.
not consider what we do, right?
Well, and here's something else, and this is first of all, thank everybody for coming, not just tonight, but for everybody who's shown up for these conversations, and supporting the book, but also because every time I talk about these stories, they're new for me all over again, and I love that. And because I never get tired of talking because I see them through your eyes, through the reader's eyes. And there's a part when they're talking about virginity, and Eula immediately is like, "You was some dirty man." And I was like, wait a minute, because I was reading that the other day, because I was doing an event, and the person who was interviewing me, he read the passage. And I was like, so he's a dirty man. Eula don't even like men. Like but she wants to marry one. She immediately went to she didn't say a man. She said a dirty man.
Mm-hmm.
Is he not dirty once you marry him? I'm not sure. Like, how does that work?
Yeah.
And so, we stay telling ourselves, and I wrote it, and I still didn't get the significance of that. And I can see Tabby is asking, like, why did I open with Eula? And it was really because I wanted to just come out the gate hard. Like, this is what this book is about. You're going to rock with me or not. No need to build towards this climax. We're going to start with a bang. But also because Eula was the first story from the collection that I had published anywhere. So it was a little sentimental. And then after that, I kind of mixed things up. Like, I didn't want long stories following each other. If a story was really heavy, I wanted something lighter, like Dear Sister, to follow it. And then I wanted to end with what I consider like a sigh. Yeah. And I think when Eddie Levert comes is like a sigh of a story with the very last lines. So that was my thinking.
Yeah. I think that was you when I was doing my reconnaissance. I've been doing it. I've been in that rabbit hole so long. But you were talking about you had to teach a class about endings. Was that you?
Was that me? Mm-mm.
Okay.
I teach a workshop, and I'll do an exercise called Fabulous First Lines.
Okay.
But not endings. Endings, yeah, I don't have a science behind it. So I need to take that class.
Okay. I'll figure it out tomorrow while I'm doing when I'm back in the lab.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. This is the best kind of church.
Yes.
Sister Fudgy. Everybody thought you were a boy. Fudgy's a girl.
Fudgy!
Say good night. Yeah.
Well, yeah, man. Thank you for everything. Like, for doing this, for like pouring into me from afar.
Oh,
like,
absolutely.
Just always available. It means the world to me. Like, I talk about you all the time.
So thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me to be a part of your birthday celebration. I hope this next year is fantastic, and that you're safe and well and blessed, and all good things coming your way, you and your family. So thank you.
Absolutely. And thank my wife for this too. This was her idea, and it has been the best birthday gift ever. She's just always gifting me. She's the greatest. So
love to see it.
Everybody in the chat, man. Preach.
I'm sorry I couldn't see all the things in the chat. I love y'all too. Love you, Crystal.
Soul woman hit the
Deaconess
line, man.
Fudgy.
I thank y'all for coming out, man, to my final leg of my series, God is Good, But I Might Be Better. Pastor Neely appreciates all the donations, all the tithes, and all the offerings. We thank you, we thank you, we thank you. May God keep you, and may God bless you.
Thank you, Achille. Have a good night, y'all. Love you.
Peace. Love you too.